How you guys doing today?
Good.
Very good, thank you.
I'm jumping right on in, and I want to say, before I get started, as you probably heard in the other interviews, I want to give a huge thank you to Kia and the Kia Telluride for being awesome sponsors. The only reason we get to be here is because of sponsors. It's expensive to cover Sundance.
Thank you, Kia.
Right.
Thank you.
And I know they say thank you for that, too. So I first want to say congrats on the movie. You guys managed to pull off this high-concept thriller in a really good way. Can you sort of talk about how the project all happened, and for people that aren't familiar with it, what it's about? Big question to start.
Well, it actually originated from a script that this guy named Drew Daywalt wrote, who wrote The Day the Crayons Quit, which is a children's book that I read to my kids, or I used to read to my kids. But really, in that script, there was these 5 pages which kind of lit me up, which became the movie. And it was this idea that this family had undergone this huge trauma. The character that David plays, his entire family is murdered, including Storm, in the first moment of the movie, basically. And then David's character, Jack Radcliffe, who's a cop, receives a phone call from the dead, apparently. And that struck me as an incredibly hopeful idea. In the middle of all of this darkness, there was this just sort of ray of hope. And that's the idea that kind of became the movie, and I just kept reiterating that. I'm a writer myself, and I sort of took that idea and just ran with it and ran with it and ran with it. And eventually it became the movie that you saw, and a movie that's really stressful and dark and intense, but also a movie about how people can sort of lift themselves up out of the horror that they face personally. Yeah.
Well, for the two of you, I really enjoyed both of your performances tremendously, and you guys have some great. I'm curious. There were some scenes where you're talking to each other on the phone. Obviously, are you guys on set working together, or were any of it done separately to make that magic happen?
Yeah, we made a pact early on that, because there were so many phone calls, we didn't want it to feel dismembered or dispassionate or technical. So we chose to always be on set for each other. And so even though we weren't literally in the same room, we would often be on a phone or in the next room, so that you're reacting to the actor's energy and not this sort of dismembered thing that is the phone. Because one of the things, for anyone who goes on to see the film, one of the challenges was that even though we have a very close relationship as uncle and niece, we spend a lot of the film apart. And so we really wanted the audience to feel like, that you want them back together. You can feel the love between these two people, and the fact that it is really painful, the fact that they're apart. And we felt the best way to do that is to be in the vicinity of each other, not add that technical layer of literally, having me reading with the script supervisor, or some random person on set, or even our lovely director who's who's very good at reading lines off. But we really wanted to do that for each other.
Right.
Well, talk a little bit about one of the things that I dug is it's a whodunit thriller in 2 different time periods. So can you sort of talk about that aspect of the film?
Yes. So, as Mr. Jacob said, I call from what Jack thinks is the dead at first, but basically he's in the future and I'm in the present. So once we figure that out, we have to, Uncle Jack, or Jack, has to give Ashley clues to not only save herself, but save her family. So I feel like working on Wrinkle, where we have those alternate universes and that time traveling aspect, really helped me personally throughout the film, and it was interesting to, I guess, partake in, because you kind of have to imagine the unimaginable, and like, this is not really realistic, but we were trying to make it realistic, so it was fun.
I think what's cool about the film is it plays everything very realistic, with one caveat, which is there's a phone call going on between 2 times.
Right.
You know? I'm always curious. I've asked this of everyone, and everyone in this room is probably bored of it, but the editing room is ultimately the final rewrite. I'm curious how things changed in the editing room, if at all.
The editing process was pretty monumental because when you have a phone call and the whole movie is based on a phone call, you could imagine 1,000 different variations of dialogue that you didn't do in production happening in when you record the additional dialogue. So it was like the world is your oyster, but that's also a problem because you could imagine all kinds of things. And also, I would be able to marry a phone call from over in the third act to a phone call in the second act if I wanted to. And I did stuff like that, and we tried to keep this board on the wall, which looked like one of those crazy man boards from A Beautiful Mind, with rubber bands going from here to there, and every time we would change something, we had to rethink everything that was going forward because of the nature of the sort of time travel-y aspect of the movie, the butterfly effect-y thing about the movie. So
I'm just curious though. Did you do any early screenings that impacted the finished film? You know, someone sees it and they're like, this doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of most filmmakers' processes, and was for me. We showed it to David, for instance, and got David's feedback, and we showed it to different people, and the producers had their say and their thoughts, and they were very important thoughts. And we showed it to friends and family, and then we showed it to a general audience. And I read every card that people wrote, and it influenced the way I thought about everything. So we were doing a lot of major heavy lifting in the edit room in the beginning and for the first couple months. And after that, there was a lot of fine tuning.
Sure. For the two of you guys, you read the script, you're getting ready to film it. What are the two scenes? What's the scene that you're most nervous to do prior to shooting, if at all?
Gosh, well, the most challenging one, and the one I read and I thought, oh wow, that's quite the scene, was actually the scene we did on the first day, the scene in the diner, the bubblegum scene.
The two most challenging scenes that we had to do, for one reason, one of them established their relationship, and we all felt pressure to establish their relationship in a way that we would care going forward, because they were quickly going to vanish. That she was going to die, and we were going to have to, feel for them. So that there was a lot of feeling of pressure there. And then the second scene that we had to shoot that very same first day was this massive scene where the bubble gum is placed under the table, and it's like was actually a 12-minute scene the first time I cut it together, and I actually. It was challenging, but funny thing is, Storm kind of on her side did it in two takes, and I just thought the second take was the take, and I didn't even want to do a third take.
And then she said, "I want 4."
We had to move so fast. It was unbelievable. It was just a blessing to have these two people that could actually do this drama immediately, and they were both so engaged, and it was. I just tried to stay out of their way as much as I could, because because I didn't have enough time to fool around with them, and two, I didn't want to ruin their thing that they had going.
Do
you remember what it was?
I would say the most challenging scene that I read and then proceeded to film, and it was challenging reading it and it was challenging filming it. I would say, I don't want to say too much, but the scene where
you can say.
Okay, the scene where Wilco gets shot, and then my dad gets shot, and my mother gets shot, and then I run upstairs. That was really challenging for me to do, but it was fun in a weird way. But when I read it, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off.
Yeah, I think that's in. I was going to say that's not a huge spoiler. I think that stuff's early in the film.
Yeah.
So
we find out that they're massacred early in the film. We just don't see it until late in the film.
Right.
Yeah. One of my last things for you guys, because I have such limited time with you guys, I'm curious what it means for each of you being at Sundance, because this is one of the most prestigious film festivals on the planet, and getting to premiere here.
Well, it's the perfect place for this film to come, because one of the great things about working at Blumhouse as people probably know, it's very restricted budgets, but what that affords you is a huge amount of creativity, and they leave us alone to go and do our work, and for the filmmaker to really express himself or herself and to basically make the film that's in their head. And that, to me, is what independent filmmaking is, which is what this festival celebrates so brilliantly. So it feels like the absolutely right place for us to come. You walk these streets and you're just surrounded by filmmakers who had a dream that thankfully somehow it's come to fruition, and they managed to marshal it into this thing that can be seen on a big screen, and this is an opportunity to do that, and that's how we felt making this film, and so that's why this festival is just, just feels perfect for the film.
I would say the same thing Mr. David said, and it's just a blessing, and it's my first Sundance, so to be here with them and to just be able to meet other creatives and people I know and just take it all in and look at the snow is pretty cool.
Yeah, they've said it all. For me, it's my third time here, and it feels like it's all one time to me, and it's pretty wonderful. I feel like it's a great opportunity to celebrate with the people that made the movie, and it's a dream come true. It was a dream come true to be here the first time, and it continues to be that now for me.
Sure. I have to wrap with you guys, but I'm just going to say for people that are watching, I know you guys made this on a budget, but it looks really good for a limited budget. Like, it has a nice gloss and a shine, and it's very well told.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seriously, thank you so much for coming in. I say congrats and good luck being here at Sundance, and enjoy the premiere and everything that goes with it.
Great. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us. Thanks.